The invitation arrives on a Tuesday, slipped between a utility bill and a hardware catalog like it belongs there. Cream cardstock, my mother's handwriting looping across the front in that precise cursive she practiced for years because my grandmother said a woman's penmanship revealed her character. I don't need to read it. The return address tells me everything. The annual Hartwell family dinner, same weekend as always, same house in Naperville, same mahogany table that has witnessed every major disappointment of my adult life. I set it on my kitchen counter and pour my second coffee of the morning, watching steam curl toward the ceiling of my Lincoln Park apartment. The one my family believes I can barely afford. My phone buzzes before I finish the first sip. It's my assistant, Jordan. She never calls before 8, unless something is on fire. I pick up. Sophie. Her voice carries the particular pitch she uses when big news breaks. Wall Street Journal just dropped their health innovators list. We're on the cover. My stomach drops straight through the hardwood floor. The print edition? Digital and print. Launching in 40 minutes. Do you want me to pull the article? I already have it open on my laptop before she finishes the sentence. The headline stares back at me in clean serif font. The Quiet Revolution. How Sophie Hartwell built a $900 million health tech empire while her family thought she was struggling. My professional headshot, the one our PR team argued about for 2 weeks, sits beneath a red banner. I look calm in the photo. Composed. Nothing like the woman sitting in her kitchen right now with shaking hands and a coffee mug going cold. Get the legal team on a call in 30 minutes, I say. And Jordan? Don't forward this to anyone on the personal side. Not yet. I hang up and stare at my name in print for a long moment. 11 years. 11 years of careful architecture, of shell companies and strategic privacy agreements, of smiling at my father's dinner table while he explained to me, slowly, the way you explain things to someone who genuinely cannot grasp them, that the healthcare industry did not need another app. My brother finds everything. Daniel Hartwell, VP of Business Development at our father's pharmaceutical distribution company, has a Google alert set for every competitor, every industry keyword, every emerging player in the healthcare logistics space. He will see this within the hour. I close the laptop and go to get dressed. 11 years ago, I stood outside my parents' house in Naperville, with a leather binder under my arm, and a rehearsed pitch running on a loop in my head. It was the Sunday before Thanksgiving, cold enough that my breath made small clouds in the air, and I had driven 3 hours from my apartment in Columbus because I needed to do this in person. I had spent 8 months building the business plan. Every projection triple verified, every market gap documented with sources. The core idea was simple in the way that only truly necessary things are simple. A platform connecting rural healthcare providers with real-time patient data analytics, reducing diagnostic delays in communities that couldn't afford specialist wait times of 6 to 12 weeks. I had the technology framework. I had letters of interest from 4 rural hospital networks. I needed seed funding to move from prototype to product. I needed $350,000. My father ran a successful pharmaceutical distribution company. He understood healthcare economics better than almost anyone I knew. More importantly, he had always said he believed in investing in people, not just ideas. He said it at dinner, at holiday parties, at my college graduation. He said it often enough that I had actually believed him. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She was already in her hostess clothes, the pearl earrings she wore whenever the family gathered. She hugged me and said I looked thin, which meant she thought I looked fine, and led me into the house that smelled of pot roast, and the specific kind of warmth that makes you feel both loved and suffocated simultaneously. Daniel was already there. He was always already there. He leaned against the kitchen counter with a glass of bourbon and the expression he wore whenever I walked into a room, something between amusement and mild inconvenience. We had grown up 2 years apart, and managed to become entirely different species. He had gone straight from Northwestern to our father's company, climbed fast, been given responsibilities, and a title and a company car. He was good at what he did in the way that people are good at things when they are handed everything necessary to be good at them. Sophie, he said. Still in Columbus? Still in Columbus, I confirmed. How's the nonprofit thing going? It's not a nonprofit. I had corrected this before, multiple times. He shrugged the way he shrugged at things he'd already dismissed. My father came in from his study, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, the posture of a man who had just been interrupted from something important. He shook my hand, which was how he had always greeted me, with a handshake, as though the gesture might someday transform me into someone he understood. We sat down to dinner first. I had learned not to lead with the ask. The conversation moved the way it always moved. Daniel's latest deal, my father's thoughts on federal reimbursement policy, my mother's garden renovation. I ate and listened, and waited for the right moment, watching the clock in my peripheral vision, the way you watch a door when you're not sure whether something good or something terrible is about to come through it. After dessert, I placed the leather binder on the table. My father raised an eyebrow. "I have something I'd like you to look at," I said. "I've been working on this for 8 months. I think it's ready." He took the binder the way he took documents in general, with the careful neutrality of a man who has learned not to commit to an expression before reading. I walked him through the executive summary. Daniel leaned over from his seat, scanning the pages with the particular focus he used on competitors, looking for weaknesses instead of strengths. I got through the market analysis, the technology overview, the letters of interest from the hospital networks, and the 5-year revenue projections before my father set the binder down. "Rural telehealth," he said. "Rural health data infrastructure," I corrected. "The telehealth component is secondary. The core product is the analytics platform. There are already players in this space. None with this integration model. The existing platforms don't talk to each other. Small rural networks can't afford enterprise systems, and nobody has built a mid-market product designed specifically for their workflow." My father was quiet for a moment. I recognized the quiet. It was the one he used when he had already made a decision, but was composing a diplomatic version of it. Daniel was less diplomatic. "$350 for something that hasn't launched," he said, gesturing at the binder. "In a market you're trying to convince us exists. The letters of interest prove the demand. Letters of interest aren't contracts." He reached for his bourbon. "Sophie, I say this with genuine concern. You've been building this thing in your apartment for 8 months. You have no medical background. You have no enterprise sales experience. You have a political science degree from Ohio State, and a master's in health informatics from Johns Hopkins," I said evenly, "which I notice you didn't mention. The healthcare IT market chews up well-funded companies with experienced teams," my father said, not unkindly. "What you're describing requires regulatory navigation, hospital system integrations, HIPAA compliance infrastructure. This isn't a weekend project, Sophie. This is years of work before you see a dollar. I know how long it will take. That's why I have a 5-year model." "Projections are stories," Daniel said. "The story sounds nice. But Dad's capital isn't a charity." My mother touched my wrist across the table. "Honey, the company has an internship program. You could learn the distribution side, build some industry relationships. That might actually help you eventually if you still want to pursue." "I don't want an internship," I said. My voice came out quieter than I intended. "I want you to look at what I've built and tell me honestly whether the business makes sense, not whether the person presenting it is who you expected." My father looked at me for a long moment. There was something in his eyes I couldn't name, something between regret and resolve. "It's not the right fit for us," he said. "I'm sorry." I gathered my papers with the same hands that had typed those 8 months of work, and I drove 3 hours back to Columbus in the dark. And when I got home, I sat on my apartment floor and let myself cry for exactly 20 minutes. Then I got up and opened my laptop. The apartment smelled like old coffee and the particular staleness of rooms where someone has been working around the clock. I had pushed the furniture to the walls to make space for index cards, each one representing a piece of the system architecture, connected by yarn in 3 colors. My roommate, Priya, stepped around the yarn map every morning on her way to her hospital residency without comment, because Priya had seen what obsession looked like up close and understood it was not something you interrupted with questions. The first version of the platform launched 14 months after my father said no. Crude, slow, prone to dropping connections at the worst moments. But the Clare County Rural Health Network in southern Illinois used it for a pilot program, and in the first 6 months, their average diagnostic referral time dropped by 31%. I printed that number and taped it to my bathroom mirror. The first investor meeting was a woman named Carol Simmons at a small healthcare-focused fund in Chicago. She asked me for my HIPAA compliance documentation before she asked for my pitch deck, and when I handed her a 60-page compliance framework, she looked up at me over her reading glasses and said, "You built this yourself?" "With a healthcare attorney and a security consultant," I said. "But yes." She wrote the first check, $200,000. I called Priya from the parking garage and could not stop shaking. Over the next 2 years, I collected rejections the way some people collect receipts, in folders, organized by date, because I had read somewhere that the distance between an idea and a company is measured in how many times you can hear no and still show up the next morning. 41 rejections before the Series A. 41. I told my family I was doing freelance health consulting. It was technically accurate. I did consult for the hospital networks. I also owned the company they were contracting with, but I saw no reason to mention that part yet. At Christmas, the year the platform hit 1,000 active users, my father asked me over dinner whether I had considered going back to get an MBA. He framed it as opportunity. Daniel suggested I look at healthcare staffing agencies, that there was real money in placement if I wanted to stay in the industry without the risk. I said I was managing fine and passed the sweet potatoes. What I did not say was that I had 22 employees in a Chicago co-working space and had just closed a contract with a 7-hospital network in rural Kentucky that would generate $800,000 in annual recurring revenue. The anonymity was not accidental. I had structured the company under SH Analytics, LLC, with enough corporate layering that my name required deliberate searching to find, partly because I had watched what happened to female founders who became publicly visible before they were large enough to be unassailable, partly because I had grown up in a house where my accomplishments were only legible when they aligned with what my father had already decided was worth accomplishing. I needed to build without that ceiling, and partly, if I am honest, because there was a certain privacy in being underestimated. I could sit at my family's table and listen and watch and learn things that people do not tell you when they know how powerful you are. 3 years before the Wall Street Journal cover, I was alone in my office at 11 on a Thursday night when I saw the headline. Hartwell Distribution faces liquidity crisis. Possible layoffs affect 300 employees. Unexpected loss of a major hospital chain contract had created a shortfall the company could not cover through traditional financing in the required timeline. My father's company. 300 families. I called my general counsel, Marcus Webb, from the parking garage. I need a clean acquisition vehicle, I said. Something with no visible connection to SH Analytics or to me personally. He was quiet for 4 seconds. Timeline? 72 hours. Sophie. Marcus. 300 people lose their jobs by end of month if this doesn't move. Another pause. I'll need the reason documented internally. Document it as strategic market stabilization. The pharmaceutical distribution network in the Midwest is part of our hospital client's supply chain. Disruption affects our platform users directly. It was true. It was also not the whole truth. And Marcus knew it, but he did not push. 5 days later, Hartwell Distribution announced bridge financing from Clearwater Capital Partners, a fund that existed as 3 letters in a Delaware filing cabinet. The terms were clean, below market interest. An 18-month repayment window, no equity stake, no board seats, no conditions beyond quarterly repayment confirmations. My father held a company-wide meeting. He thanked an anonymous investor whose foresight had saved the company, and credited his own relationships for securing the unconventional financing. 300 people kept their jobs. My father kept his company. I watched the press release from my office and felt something I could not cleanly name. Not bitterness. Something more complicated than that. At Thanksgiving that year, Daniel raised a toast to the company's resilience. My father talked about the importance of good networks and strong reputations. I ate my turkey and said I was glad things had worked out, and declined to explain why I had barely slept in the week before the financing closed. My mother asked if I was seeing anyone. I said I was focusing on work right now. She patted my hand the way she patted my hand when she was worried about me. The morning the Wall Street Journal piece goes live, I spend 2 hours in back-to-back calls with my legal team, my communications director, and the 3 members of my executive team who have always known the full structure of the company. By noon, my phone has received 14 texts from family members I have not heard from in years. By 3 in the afternoon, Jordan has counted 47 missed calls from numbers I do not recognize. My brother has not called. He has not texted. That silence tells me more than any of the other calls. I drive to Naperville on a Friday evening, alone, in my own car. No driver, no preparation beyond the copy of the journal, folded in my passenger seat, and 11 years of extremely patient waiting. My mother opens the door and pulls me into a hug that lasts longer than usual. She is wearing the pearl earrings. Her eyes are wet around the edges, and she keeps looking at me, and then looking away, the way people look at something they are trying to reconcile with a version of it they held for a very long time. "Why didn't you tell us?" she says. Not a question exactly. "Come inside," I say. "Let's talk about it with Dad." My father is in the living room. He is standing, which is unusual. He is a man who sits. The copy of the Wall Street Journal is on the coffee table in front of him, and he has clearly read it more than once because the pages have the particular wear of paper that has been turned and returned. He looks at me in a way I have never seen him look at me before. Not with a careful neutrality, not with a gentle pity, with something that looks like bewilderment, and something that looks like admiration, and something that looks like the dawning understanding that he has been substantially wrong for a very long time. 900 million, he says. It crosses $1 billion with the Series D close next quarter, I say. But yes. He sits down slowly. My mother touches his arm. For a moment, the three of us exist in the particular quiet of a room where something irreversible has just been acknowledged. The bridge financing, he says. 3 years ago, the Clearwater Capital. I meet his eyes. His face does something complicated. That was you. I needed the supply chain stable for my hospital clients, I say. The other reason lives in the air between us, unspoken. He is smart enough to hear it. He presses both hands flat against his knees, and he does not speak for 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds I watch my father, for the first time in my adult life, not know what to say. Daniel arrives 40 minutes later. He comes through the front door with the specific energy of someone who has been rehearsing a reaction and is not entirely sure which version he has settled on. He looks at me and then at the journal on the coffee table and then back at me. "So," he says. "So, I agree." He sits. We eat a dinner that my mother has overprepared in the way she overcooks when she is anxious. The conversation is careful. Everyone is handling something fragile and knows it. Daniel asks about the platform with questions that are 60% genuine curiosity and 40% competitive intelligence, and I answer the 60% and redirect the 40. By the time my mother brings out dessert, something has shifted. Not fixed, not resolved, shifted. Like the first small movement in a structure that has been locked in one position for so long that even a centimeter of change feels seismic. I drive home with the windows down, even though it is October and cold. 6 weeks later, Jordan sends me a message at 9 in the morning with a single line. "Your brother and your father are in the lobby. No appointment. They have a pitch deck." I read it twice. I tell her to put them in the Meridian conference room. I tell her I'll be there in 20 minutes. I take exactly 20 minutes, not because I need the time to prepare, but because I have learned, over 11 years of building something real, that the people who understand power are rarely the ones who rush toward it. I walk past the conference room glass on the way to get coffee. My father and Daniel are inside. My father is looking at the Innovation Awards on the wall. Daniel is looking at his phone with an expression he uses when he is masking nerves. They are both wearing suits, which they do not always do when visiting family. They have come to impress someone. They simply do not know yet that the someone is me. I take my coffee into the room and close the door. My father half rises. Daniel freezes with his hand on his phone. "Sophie." My father recovers first. "We didn't realize this was. We asked for a meeting with the acquisitions team." "I know." I sit at the head of the table, the empty chair they had left for whoever they believed would be walking in. Jordan told me. "What are you pitching?" A look passes between them. Daniel pulls himself together. He has always been fast at pivoting. "We've been developing a concept for about 8 months, he says, and the 8 months lands in my chest like a small stone thrown from a great distance. Healthcare supply chain transparency. A platform that gives hospital procurement teams real-time visibility into distribution, logistics, and pricing. He clicks to his first slide. The concept is not bad. It is adjacent to problems my platform addresses from the other direction. In a different universe, in a version of this where things had gone differently 11 years ago, it might have been something I would consider. "We're seeking $400,000 in seed capital," my father says, "for a 25% equity stake." I let the number rest on the table for a moment. "Walk me through the market differentiation," I say. Daniel does. He is good at this, actually. Better than I remembered. He has done the work, prepared the answers, anticipated the objections. He presents with the confidence of someone who has spent years watching his father close rooms full of skeptics. When he finishes, I open the folder Jordan has placed at my seat. I slide a single page across the table. It is the email my father sent me 11 years ago, forwarded through his assistant. Mr. Hartwell appreciates your interest but does not feel this is the right opportunity at this time. He wishes you well in your future endeavors. My father stares at it. His hand does not move. I sat across this kind of table 41 times, I say, before someone said yes. 41 people told me the market was too niche, or the timing was wrong, or that I didn't have the right background, or that projections are just stories. I pause. You were not the first person to say no to me. But you were the one whose no I drove 3 hours home from in the dark. Daniel's jaw tightens. My father does not look away from the page. The concept has merit, I say. Your timing in the market is actually reasonable. Your differentiation argument holds up in the mid-market space. I close the folder, but I'm not going to fund it. My father looks up. Not because it isn't viable, I continue. Because I'm not your safety net. I built what I built without a single dollar from anyone who shares my last name. And I would not change that, because it is the reason I trust every decision I make. You need to go find someone who believes in you the way I needed someone to believe in me. I genuinely hope you do. Daniel opens his mouth and closes it again. My father is quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nods. Not in agreement, exactly. In recognition. I stand. Jordan will see you out. Good luck with your raise. I walk back to my office and close the door and stand at the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline for a long time. Not triumphant, not bitter, something cleaner than either of those things. My phone rings 3 days later. My father's name on the screen. I let it ring twice before I pick up. I've been thinking, he says, without preamble, which is how he begins every conversation he considers important, about what you said in that conference room. Okay. I said no to you because I thought I understood what I was looking at. I thought 11 months of work from a 24-year-old with no industry connections was a manageable risk to decline. A pause. I was evaluating the presentation instead of the person making it. I don't say anything. You built something that 900,000 patients across 14 states now use to get faster diagnoses, he says. You did that, without us. Another pause, longer this time. I'm sorry it took me this long to understand what that means. My throat does something inconvenient. I look at the ceiling. I have a board meeting in an hour, I say. I know. I'll let you go. He stops. Sophie. I'd like to have dinner sometime. Just the two of us. If you're willing. I think about the index cards on my apartment floor, the yarn map, the 14 months it took to build something anyone could use. I think about 41 rejection letters organized by date. I think about the 3-hour drive home in the dark. I'll have Jordan send you some dates, I say. 3 months later, I am at my father's table for Thanksgiving. I drive myself. I wear what I actually wear, which is a cashmere sweater that costs more than my first month's rent in Columbus and dark jeans and boots, that my mother compliments without the undercurrent she used to use. My brother is already there when I arrive. He is standing in the kitchen with a glass of wine and an expression I have never seen on his face before, something undefended, which looks strange on someone who has spent 30 years treating every interaction as a negotiation. Your platform just got written up in Health Affairs, he says. The diagnostic delay research out of Duke. I know, I say. We funded part of that study. He nods. Then, after a moment, the patient outcome data is remarkable. I know that too. A silence between us that is not hostile. Just large and new, like a room that has been unlocked for the first time. I've been talking to some contacts, he says, about our pitch. Taking a different approach to the financing. Good, I say, and I mean it. That's exactly what you should do. My mother calls us to the table. My father is already seated, and when I come in, he stands and pulls out my chair, which he has never done before, and it is such a small gesture that I have to look away for a second before I sit down. The dinner is loud in the way Hartwell family dinners have always been loud. Competing opinions, and half-finished stories, and someone always talking over someone else. But underneath it, something different. Not the performance of family, something more like the actual thing. My father gives a toast at the end, as he always does. He talks about the year and its lessons, as he always does. Then he pauses and looks at me across the table, and he says, and to Sophie, who has been teaching us what we should have already known. My cousin raises her glass. Daniel raises his glass. My mother, whose eyes are wet again, raises her glass. I raise mine. I do not make a speech. I have been making a speech for 11 years, quietly, in server logs and contract negotiations, and 41 rejection letters organized by date. It has already been said, after dinner, I find my old bedroom at the end of the hall, the one my mother has turned into a guest room but kept one shelf of my old things. There is a framed photo from my Ohio State graduation, me squinting into the sun with my diploma and a smile I don't remember posing for, the morning before I drove to Columbus and started building. I look at that version of myself for a long time. She had no idea what was coming. Not the hard parts and not the rest of it. She just knew the idea made sense, and that she was going to prove it whether anyone helped her or not. I set the frame back on the shelf, straighten it, and go back to join my family.